must think we're gonna start.
They must think so. No, I didn't see Amy ready yet.
You know, I like this chair a lot better than my one,
Really?
because it's made a little.
And who's out here wants to do the prayer? Anyone want to do the prayer or pledge?
I don't care, whichever.
We do the prayer?
Sure, why not?
Sheriff, do you want to do the pledge in a few minutes? Okay.
It's 9 o'clock.
Are you ready? Okay, if you're ready, I'm ready. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the budget workshop today. If you wouldn't mind, please rise. We'll have Commissioner Barrick lead us in the invocation and our Sheriff David Vincent leading us in the prayer. Or the pledge, I'm sorry.
Dear Lord, we ask you to bless us this day as we discuss very, very important things that have to do with our county. We ask you to be with those that are here, that they hear, they listen, and we do a good job for you and for the citizens of Citrus County. We thank you for all the blessings we have in this country. We thank you for our police, for our fire, for our EMS, for our doctors and nurses. And we thank you for just being here. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Which flag you want?
You would join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
This is a public workshop of the Citrus County Board of County Commissioners this 6th day of July, 2026. In attendance are Chair Diana Finnegan, First Vice Chair Janet Barrick, Second Vice Chair Jeff Kennard, Commissioner Rebecca Bays, and County Administrator Steve Howard.
Thank you. And it looks like first up, Mr. Howard, if you're ready, we'll have Tammy Wilson come on.
Yes, please, Tammy. There, wherever you're comfortable at, podium or.
I'd rather.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Are you live?
Hello? Can you hear me? Okay. Good morning, Commissioners and Mr. Howard. We're having this workshop today to get some direction on some final items as we prepare to move into the budgeting process. Many items on this budget presentation we're giving you today are estimates. We've been working through the different phases of the budget process since approximately January. Right now, we are really about a month ahead of time. So a lot of these, like I said, are estimates. We've done our best to try and work through these numbers, and we're kind of going to just walk through the whole budget here and get your direction on some things and make you aware of some items. Okay, so first I want to talk about the millage rate. At our March 10th budget meeting, we got direction from the board to start working on the budget based on maintaining the same millage rate. On June 1st, the property appraiser gave us our estimated tax values, and we determined this would give us about $119 million in taxes for the 26-27 year. And over this year's current budget, that's about a $6.4 million increase. Now, on June 11th, we had a vote for the fund balance true-up, and direction was provided and voted on by the board to allocate the true-up fund to reserves to support a reduction in the millage for 26-27. So based on the estimated taxable values, that would bring the millage rate down to 6.5473, and that would give us estimated taxes of $111,592,191, which is approximately 1.1 less than our current year's taxable tax change. I also put in here the rollback rate because that has been a big discussion, and I'm going to discuss that with you in a moment. But the rollback rate with the 0.044 billion is 6.7947, and this would have given us about 115.8 million in tax revenues and a $3 million increase, and that's for growth. That's what we get when we get the rollback. Now, since we prepared this, a few things have happened. We had to have this posted for public records last week. The property appraiser certified the taxable value on June 30th, so that came in. And then SB 4F passed, which is what Alex has been talking to you about. And so with the property appraiser's estimates, the new tax thing, the certified, let's see. So for your maximum millage rate, and we would need 4 votes, is 7.412. So we are not looking at this point, you are not looking at going that high, but in my opinion, they're passing this because a lot of counties are looking at increasing the millage this year to make up for the tax reform that's coming. So that's basically, we ran the numbers, the trim came out with new forms, we put all the numbers in. To get up to 7.412, we'd have to have a 2/3 vote. If you have a unanimous vote, you can go as high as you want, up to the 10, which would be an additional 1.6531 above the 7.412. So just so you're aware of what that legislation has done, because I know Alex comes up and he talks and it's a lot of words, but just to put it into perspective, that's where we're at with the new millage. Another interesting thing that came out with this, they sent us a bulletin on the 1st, and there's a subsection in House Bill 7031, created subsection 200.065 paren 5 and paren 8A and paren 3 to clarify the voting threshold for adoption of a millage rate for the first year ad valorem taxes. So anything that we have a tax out there but we don't levy anything, a municipal service taxing unit or for dependent special districts, county or municipality or municipal service taxing unit has not levied any millage rate in the prior year, they must adopt a rate either by a unanimous vote of the membership of the governing body or by a 3/4 vote of the membership of the governing body if you have more than 9 members. So if you do want to establish anything in those millage rates that we have already, for instance, like we have the law enforcement MSTU, you would have to have a unanimous vote. So that's just something else that came out. They sent that to us on July 1st. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay. We're going to move on to our next slide. And this is just kind of a graphical depiction. And this is an updated slide. We did add it to you. We had accidentally grabbed the sheriff's budget from this year instead of next year. So we just want you, the current millage rate between the mandates and the constitutionals, we have about 12% of the millage rate for the BOCC operations. And then with the reduced millage rate, we're looking at about 6%. All right, so now we're going to get into our constitutional officers' budgets, and a few of them are here. And after I present the slide, I will give them time to come up if you have any questions. So here we just have the sheriff's office budget, and he amended it for the cops. And so his current year budget is at 47.7. I'm just going to round instead of reading all these numbers. And for this coming year, he presented his budget a few months ago to you, and it was $53.6 million, which is an increase of almost $6 million. This is truly what is an expense of the millage. The cities aren't in here, and then the piece that the school resource officers is paid for by the schools is not in here. So this is the true cost to the county. It's about a 12% increase over the adjusted budget. It is about a 15.6% increase over the original budget. And just to put in perspective, it's 3.2715 mils of the current the taxable, certified taxable value of the sheriff's budget. So do you want me to bring the sheriff up at this time? He's here for questions, or we can keep going.
Board, do you have any questions for the sheriff?
I don't.
Okay. All right. All right. So what we did here is we kind of presented the budgets, and then we want to show you here's the ad valorem, and as we reduce line by each of these items where we're going. So this just shows you after we take the sheriff's budget out, what the balance that we have. Currently this year we have about 65 million. Next year at the current, if we keep the millage rate the same, it's 65.5. If we reduce the millage rate after we fund the sheriff, we're at about $58 million. Right? Our next constitutional officer is the clerk's office. The clerk's budget this current year is 5.459, and next year she's looking at 4.568. She did have a large purchase of a software system or ERP this year. Hers is about 0.2789 mils, and she has a brief presentation, and I'm going to step down and let her present.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So I'll be brief with my presentation. As Tammy said, we are requesting the 4.5. I'll just round mills. It is supporting our constitutional and statutory duties, but the biggest thing that I wanted to mention, and if you want to go to the next slide, is that the non-reoccurring overall, our budget went down 11.77% because we had that big purchase last year of the ERP system. We are asking, our budget did go up by our budget is going up by 11.77%, but it decreased by 16.28%. I basically wanted to let you all know that we asked for no new positions. As you know, we're trying our best to use the resources we have. Not sure what the ERP system and the improvements will bring with that, but the large portion of our increase this year is continuing with that ERP system. Our personnel services budget did increase by 6.7%. That's primarily due to the health insurance cost and the cost of living adjustment that we've put in our budget. That's consistent with the county and what they're asking. And then we will continue to look for ways to improve. We will have one position that will come off, just to make you aware of our fiscal year 28 budget. So you will see a reduction of a position then, because we will have a payroll clerk who will be retiring, and we already have their succession plan in our budget currently. For the non-reoccurring costs, we need $78,000 for a data system upgrade. We are asking for a contingency funding of $145,000. So that is only if we do not go live with a Clarion, which is the new ERP system on the board side, by 10/1. I don't think that will not happen. We just went live on the clerk side June 20th. Everything is going very well. We're already live with the payroll system. So this is just a contingency that should we not make that 10/1 deadline, we would have to continue with some of the current softwares we have until we are in a position to get live. And we've been working with the department management budget very closely, as well as the departments. Again, I do not believe that we will need to be asking for that funding, but I just wanted to make you aware. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Board, do you have any questions for the clerk?
Okay, I got a question.
Commissioner Barrick.
Okay, over the course of this past year, you closed one of the offices down. I thought that was supposed to be a savings thing. Was that a savings that you already budgeted into the cost of what you bought when you started doing the ERP system?
So the closure of the annex counter impacted our court's budget, not our board budget. That counter was funded by official records revenue and the court side budget as well in the Inverness. And by doing that, we were able to absorb 2 positions on the courts and the official records budget. So finance and the internal audit and the portion of the IT that the board funds, you'll see a reduction in a position next year for the payroll position, but it did not impact the board's budget.
Then I misunderstood. I thought that was supposed to help your budget, but
Yes, well, it did, but it helped
but
on the
not
other
on- not
side,
on the- on
other
the
side of
board
the house.
side.
We're still significantly at a deficit on our court side, so it was a way to reduce that.
okay.
Madam Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
Tracy, how many people work at the annex?
Off the top of my head, a rough estimate, 20 to 23.
And what are the services that are
It's
provided?
financial services, so all your comptroller functions, your payroll, accounts payable, grants, inventories, and then internal audit.
Do you think that there'll ever be a way that we could absorb those positions to be to a different location at some point, or do you see yourself needing more space?
Well, we won't. I don't think we need any more space necessarily, but I don't know where else I would put them. They can't go to the courthouse. That space is already at capacity. Meadowcrest, we have, when we closed the counter, we shifted 2 other employees out to Meadowcrest. So they're at capacity now. So I don't have anywhere else for my finance or my IA to go. I'm not objective
Okay.
to another location.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. So as we continue down our budget little journey here, after we've taken the sheriff's budget out of the millage or the tax ad valorem, and we take out the clerk's budget. This current year, we're down to about 59.5, and if we keep the current millage, we're looking at about 61, and if we reduce the millage, we're looking about 53.4. So that's the next office we're going to talk about is the elections office. So the elections office has increased or decreased their budget by about $33,000 in their reoccurring. Their non-reoccurring budget, they did have a special election that came up last year, so that was an increase. So they were able to reduce it this year. And the non-reoccurring expense for this year that they have, the $317,460, is for and this is technology. I typed exactly what the supervisor of elections gave me, an EVID Edge 3s. They are electronic poll books, network switches, and portable generators is what she's asking for in her non-reoccurring budget. So I don't think she's here, so she is here. Any questions? Sorry.
Anyone for the supervisor, Commissioner Bass? Miss Supervisor, could you come to the podium, please?
Hi there. How are you today?
How are you?
Will there be any reimbursement from the state on the special election?
Yes, the state is required to reimburse me, and when we send out the budgets to them, it's very comprehensive, the budgets we have to send. We send them right away, and well, we heard back and said, I'm sorry, we have no money this year to reimburse you. And so that'll keep on until they get the money in their budget, and then we'll be in line to get that money back, which is almost $500,000, I think.
And are there any other monies that are still outstanding from prior elections that are due to you?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
We're busy right now in the midst of elections. This morning we're holding training classes. We have our 400 poll workers being trained, and we're in equipment training. So we started off this morning with equipment training. Our vote-by-mail ballots for the civilians will be dropped on July 9th. We're sending more files today, and so we're well into our election process for this year. as an update. Would it be appropriate at this meeting to talk about the canvassing?
Share.
Okay. Ms. Commissioner Holly Davis has recused herself from the board, from being on our canvassing board, and so for political activity. And so for that, we're asking the board to appoint someone else for that. I do have someone in mind, if you'd like to do that, which would be, and he's volunteered to do it, he is on my board now as an alternate, would be the prior Judge Mark Yearman. And is that something that we can discuss here or not?
We can't take a vote today,
Okay.
but that's something we could put on the next agenda possibly?
Yes, and I need it on there immediately because I have to change all of my legal documents and get it out into a legal ad before our meeting on the 29th.
I think we can still make it before
Yes.
it gets released tomorrow.
Okay?
I know staff is listening, so we're good.
It'll be on the next agenda.
Okay, thank you. All right.
For
Anything else?
preparation, though, would it be appropriate to have a consensus just to allow her for planning purposes?
I mean, it's up to the chair. I'm gonna.
Sure.
As a consensus, I would say yes.
Yes?
Put it on the agenda?
No, to allow her the
Yes.
that you
Like
would
where,
vote.
where we're leaning if she wants to add Mark Yearman to the board.
Oh, okay.
Consensus.
All right, sure.
Unless you have someone else, that's fine too. Okay?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay. All right, so we'll go to after. So here we are. We're laddering down on our ad valorem. I want to find this page. Okay. So at the current millage, for the current year, we're at 56.4 after we've paid the sheriff, the clerk, and the supervisor of elections. For next year, if we keep the millage the same, we're at 57.9. And then if we use the reduced millage rate, we're at 50.4. So our next two officers are the property appraiser and the tax collector. Both of their budgets are approved by the Florida Department of Revenue because they receive a generous portion of their funding from the tax collection, the tax levy. And so the property appraiser's budget is due to us July 1st, and he submitted his. The tax collector's is not due, and this is all in the Florida statute. Theirs is not due until August 1st, so every year we make an estimate and we just go with the 5% as an estimate for the tax collector. So we are looking at a 3.2% increase for the property appraiser, and that so he's kept his very modest too. So as we move on as we're deducting our budget, now we're down to, yes.
For the tax collector, since our budget, we're budgeting before the budget's due August 1st. If they come in lower historically, I can't remember, are we then lowering the budget?
We will move it out of contingency. We
Okay.
have that contingency that we use for stuff between the preliminary and the final budget, and we would move it in and out of there. And she's
This is just a hold right now.
Yeah, and it's been pretty consistent. We've been pretty good about holding that. All right. So as we're laddering down, we're at 47.9 million this year. Keeps us at about 49 million next year with the current millage, and we're down to 41.5 with the reduced millage. So then we just did a little summary for you for the all the constitutionals, and all the constitutionals at the current millage rate next year, if we keep the millage rate the same, it's about 58.8% of the ad valorem taxes for the constitutionals. For the reduced millage, it's about 62.8%. So about a 4% difference in that, those two millage rates. All right. So the next thing we have is our state mandates. Those are always fun for us. Many of these we've done our best to estimate based on prior year increases. Some of them we do not have our total budgets yet, but we've done a really good job. The Department of Budget has really done look down and see where we're at with these. We are reducing this budget, and the biggest piece is the EMS subsidy. That now that EMS has gone to the outside billing system, they are able to fund themselves. So that's a big help to the whole general fund. Great job for them being able to collect those revenues to bring in to cover their true costs. So as when you take over anything like that, we knew we were going to have to fund them for a few years and help out, and they've done a great job bringing this down. This is one of the first budgets I hit when I came last year. I asked them to reduce. They came down 250. I asked them to reduce it down to $1 million this year. They came down to nothing. So I think that's a good job, and I want to say kudos to them. Do you have any questions on the mandates that we have?
I do. I was just looking at that. I didn't catch it maybe the first time when I looked through the book, but if we're saving 1.7 million, and that's 100%, plus forestry, we're saving 3.1%, it doesn't seem like we should only be saving $513,000.
Well, the detention facility is going up 626.
Say that again?
The detention facility, the jail,
Detention.
626,000, and then the medical examiner we're increasing by 328. So that's a combination of right there almost $1 million, and then Medicaid, and that's an estimate that we're doing right here. It could come in more. We're very conservative when we budget this. That's almost $2 million, right? I mean, 200,000 right there. So, I mean, it is a formula in a spreadsheet, so I hope that Excel works correctly.
For the detention facility, what was the backup information of why it's going up $626,000?
Right, it's 4% is their, that's what they can go up. This has nothing to do with U.S. Marshals, U.S. Virgins. We back all that out because those are funded separately, just like we take out the cities and the SRO piece for the school piece for the sheriff. We back those out because we are not funding those individuals, those
Right.
people. So they have a 4% in their contract that they can increase their per diem rate.
I see. Okay.
And also there's some other repairs that I think are needing to happen. We had to increase that budget a little bit. Any more questions on mandates?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner
medical
Bates.
examiner, is that for the building?
Yes. Yes.
And has there been a decision? Maybe
Madam Chair,
Please.
I'll let you.
it's gonna be a while. We have the property, but we're still in limbo with the divorce proceedings, so
Yep.
it's not gonna be on this year budget.
Yes, we have not received any updates since the last meeting when we brought it up with the budget development, so.
Mr. Howard, I am correct in that assessment, don't you think?
Yeah, I think so. I don't, it's hard to tell what's going to happen there, but something will happen at some point. But yeah, it seems like we're a little ways off from now. But I think there was a sense of urgency when I started attending some of those meetings. But I think it's going to be a while. I think so. But whether we can reduce that now or we just got to
Yeah, the
be
6 counties are
we just got to be
still
prepared.
together at this point in time.
Something's going to happen. We just don't.
The divorce
when.
needs to go through before we can decide about the size of the building and get the drawings redone if it's only gonna be 4 counties and yada, 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 so. And again, Marion's floating the bond, so that'll take some time as well, and then we're just helping to pay the bond.
Correct.
Anyone else?
Any other questions on the mandates? All right, as we continue to reduce our our general fund tax ad valorem, we are looking at 17. This current year, we have almost 18 million. Next year, with the current millage, we're looking at about 19.6. So this means that between the constitutionals and the mandates, 75.3% of the ad valorem goes to that. And then if we reduce the millage, and we added judicial in here because that's just a piece that the judicial services for them, we didn't see any increase for them. So we're looking about 12 million. This is 89.2% of ad valorem, so we're looking at like 10.8% of ad valorem for county services. And the next slide just basically just shows you that.
Amy, can I just correct you on one thing?
Yes.
Every slide you keep saying if we reduce the millage. The board voted unanimously at the last meeting to do that. So that's where we sit. I don't want anyone getting confused by you keep saying if, because there was a board vote. So in your presentation, we're sitting at 12 million.
Okay.
Are you 100% sure that was unanimous? Because I vehemently said we should not reduce the millage before we know what happens in November.
So was it 4-1?
I thought it was 3-2.
It was 3-2.
Was it 3-2?
Yes. Two of us were very much, it's not often that Commissioner Barrick and I are on the same page and the other three aren't. So.
Thank you for the
I remember
correction.
that.
Board vote, but it was 3-2.
And I'm gonna say strenuously one more time, we do not know what's happening in November, and this is a very bad time to reduce the millage, because the state's, if it goes through, the state is going to take away all of our control, all of it. Meaning we can't, we can't increase millage, we can't do anything, and we have $750 million backlog in road resurfacing. I understand it's an election year and folks want to make a point that we're being very careful with taxes. We are, and we've been too careful in the past, and that's why we're in the boat we're in with bad roads that cost 1.2 million instead of, 100 and something thousand to resurface. So,
Well, thank you for that. And we're reminding each other of the meeting. That was one of my first points, to take that money and I think we were on the same page about that, to give it to roads or parks or something, use it for the people, and then we'd have it. But I didn't get 3 that way, so it was return it to the people, and that's where we are.
again, we just went to Florida Association of Counties 2 weeks ago. And the problem is, we sat through, 3 of us went. We sat through presentations on how devastating this is going to be for home rule. And it's just gonna be bad if it passes. It's gonna be very bad. And it's not a tax cut, it's a tax shift. But it's going to take all of the control out of us, so we need to at least level set where we are now at this millage. I'm not saying increase it, I'm saying just keep it here and let's see what happens in November, especially when we have a road, even without November, with the road backlog we have. And honestly, long-term, I'm still in favor of doing MSTUs and reducing the heck out of the millage. So it's more people are directly paying for something that they recognize. Their road gets paved and they go, yeah, I paid for that, but I got something out of it. It's a very direct benefit. So, trust me, I'm all about being frugal with tax dollars, but anyway, I've said enough.
Ready? Okay. All right. So we're going on to the next page. So now we're going to go into our county departments and the work that we've done here. There's a few departments that there's estimates in here, and so I will go over those when we get there. So this budget includes the Board of County Commissioners, which is, the 5 of you, and Reese. And then we have business services. This is things that are central to the whole county. The whole county, the audit comes out of here, the postage, those are mandates. There's some other things that come out of here that are applied to the whole county and not just to one particular department. And that we are estimating a very slight increase in that. We will do our best to keep that budget low. We have our communication services, our county administration, our county attorney. Their budget did go down. They had to bring in Val, so in the interim while Beth was retiring, so he could learn his job. And so they were able to get rid of that temporary position. We have human resources, management and budget, and those, we moved rest management, 2 of their positions from management and budget over to human resources, so that was almost a level switch in the budgets. We also put system management and GIS in here, And I forgot to put a little star on system management and GIS. We're still working on that and working with them to see what budgets we can increase. But as we all know, technology moves so much faster than our budgets do. And to keep up, we're doing our best to do that. So overall, the administrative, what I consider administrative support, their budgets are up 1.1. Now, in the county budgets, we did the 2.8 cost of living. That was consensus by the board. We're also seeing an increase for health insurance, and some of these figures might change a little bit because we're just in the middle of working through those numbers. And then FRS was pretty level for everybody except for special risks, so that wasn't a big increase. But we did do our best. The departments came in doing their best to stay as level or cut where they could. So that's the administrative support. The next department we're going to talk about, and these are the general fund pieces. Community services has some, they're another one that's pretty much general fund supported. Animal services, we have that. Community and support services, the centers, the transit and senior service, the grant match, we added that in there. That is slightly up, but as we get lots of money out of grants, and we need to put in money for that. Extension and housing. Parks and grounds, their budget, and now I'm going to tell you, this is a tight budget based on what they originally asked for. I mean, our parks are in bad shape, and we're working very hard to renovate the fields and the turf where we need. So this budget did see a slight increase overall, probably the largest one here in this department. Our court programs, this is an estimate. We haven't got down to the nitty gritty to look at what they'll need help from the general fund. That's the teen court, the drug court, all those support services we offer, and then our veteran services. So even with the parks and ground increase, they kept it at 9.3 for all these together. So they still are working hard to keep their budgets where they're at. Next, we have growth management, and growth management has other departments. Land development falls under a mandate, so that is up in the state mandate piece. Code and growth fall under this department in the general fund. Building is an enterprise, so that does not fall under there. They were able to cut their budget some. We did move a percentage of Eric Landon's salary over to buildings, as he spends a good part of his time over there. So we've been trying to be creative in our budgeting and where can our enterprise funds help out our general fund. That's really an important thing. So we were able to reduce their overall general fund budget by 12.2. And then the last one that's funded out of general fund is our public works. Now, public works has several departments. They also, transportation falls under there, but that's a separate ad valorem, and we're only talking about general fund today. So under this one, they have the aquatics. Most of that's paid for a grant, but we do have to match it. So we've estimated a match in here. Aviation, they have some fees, and then they have some grant matches, and that is in here. That's an estimate. Facilities, that's probably a big increase in this budget. That's, our facilities have been neglected for a long time, so they're trying to do their best and prioritize, and they also cut a good part of their budget as we went through phases 2 and 3. And, what can we put off another year? Let's put this off another year and this off another year. But eventually those maintenance is deferred, cost more. And then we have our fleet and our vehicle trust fund, and fleet supports a lot of itself through the enterprise funds paying for it, but the general fund does have vehicles, and this is an estimate as we're working through their final numbers this year to make sure that we have enough money to support them. And their overall public works is up about 5.4%. And then if we gather all those figures together, so the general fund, ad valorem, BOCC departments total to $32,684,472. And as you can see, we've blown through the ad valorem at this point. We do have other funding sources. We're going to go over that. We're going to walk through the whole budget today quickly. All right, so at this current year, after we've done all of our county departments, we're at $13.3 million. if we keep the current millage rate for next year, we would have 13. The reduced millage rate from the meeting is at 20.6 million that we are now going to have to dip into our other funds or other funding sources. So any questions from the departments that you have at this time?
Commissioner Reyes.
Tammy, so when we talk about allocating, you mentioned that some of these get switched around from general fund. I think you particularly said growth management is one of those.
We went and looked at the budget and we determined that because Mr. Landon spends so much time in building, we're able to allocate portion of his salary to buildings.
So when we look at allocation of things like your department, administration, Mr. Howard, Marisol, just general overhead, are we allocating any of those costs out?
Yes, ma'am. We bring about from the enterprise funds, it's almost $3 million in indirect costs that comes into the general fund from those funds between the utilities and building and solid waste. We bring in approximately, that's in the transfer piece that when we bring in, talk about other revenues, that's in there. And I did look at that figure and we budgeted about 2.9 million this year. And so it is a percentage based on the budget. So we could say roughly about 3 million comes into the general fund from other enterprise funds.
On the assumption that homestead property taxes would pass on the ballot in November, or just kind of looking in general of what's being said about how we should be looking at our budgets, even through the House bill. I can't remember the number, 13 something. It says to take public safety first. That's kind of where we should land, and that should always be funded.
Yes.
So when we think about public safety, I know we get a budget from the sheriff, but then we have EMS and we have fire and we have some allocations. But are we allocating do we know what it takes, all things aside, to what that funding would look like, how much more we're taking out of general fund to keep them whole, like to operate?
Well, EMS was 1.75, but now they're going to be operating on their own. They are not.
No, I understand that part. What I'm saying, are you allocating line item budgeting for buildings, maintenance, grounds
Yes,
maintenance?
they pay for their own maintenance and they pay for their own utilities. Our departments that have the enterprise funds, they pay for that.
Okay.
You know, like utilities is moving to the old Nature Coast building. They're paying the debt on that building out of utilities. That's not coming out of general fund. So we move as much expenses as we can over to those departments directly, and then we also charge those enterprise funds the indirect cost, which is the things you were talking about.
Right.
The departments that support them and do that. They get billed directly for fleet. They get billed directly for various things like that. Their vehicles, those are nothing supported by the general fund on those.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner Barrick.
Okay, you talked about moving and transferring. You put part of Eric's salary. Now, I know the MSBU's. Is that also taken into account? Because I know they pay part of salaries and part of salaries. Is that?
They have individuals that actually work for them.
No,
that-
not the,
but
not
we
the
haven't-
employees.
We do an
Talking about the county employee.
we do an indirect cost. We only do an indirect cost to them. We do not allocate any, like Carl or Mitch's salaries. We don't allocate.
Oh.
We do.
Well,
Okay,
maybe I'm
sorry.
Maybe
Okay, I'm sorry. I misunderstood. We do allocate a piece of their salaries. So yes,
Because there's the secretary that goes and there's.
yes.
It is, Carl comes sometimes and Mitch was coming.
Okay, 14,000 to Citrus Springs and 3,000 to Beverly Hills.
Right, in other words,
A little bit, yes, we do.
okay, so those are
And they-
allocated, they're taken out of what is in the
But they don't go in general fund. Those are funded through the transportation ad valorem. like Carl and Mitch and the secretary, they're funded out of the transportation ad valorem. Their departments, they're not funded out of Public Works Administration is funded out of transportation. The only thing in Public Works in the general fund are aquatics, aviation, facilities, and fleet.
Okay,
Okay?
now, the fleet. I asked how many vehicles we had, and I was surprised at how many vehicles we own. What is the length of time before we get rid of a vehicle or mileage?
See if Brian could come forward.
let
You just happen to have
expert come.
the expert in the audience.
Good morning.
Hello there.
Board, sir. So the length of time typically takes, once we get approval at the board, we take it and we get a PO for it. It usually happens within the next summer, so from October to roughly June, before we receive the vehicle. And then we immediately put it up for auction unless we put it into like a vehicle pool for,
How long do we keep them?
so the board approved it in December that we're minimum of 155 years on light duty vehicles and a maximum of 200,000 miles in 10 years.
Can you restate the first one? I think you misspoke.
155 years didn't sound right.
150,000 miles
150,000
in
miles
5 years.
Or 5 years, okay.
or 5 years. Okay.
And we also added engine hours as part of our replacement criteria as well for people that like a building that their vehicles they are basically their office. So we made sure that we account for that so we're not incurring huge maintenance costs on low mileage vehicles.
Now, we maintain these on a regular basis, so they're getting their oil changes and getting their wheels and all this other stuff done.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you think that 150,000 miles is too short of a lifespan for a vehicle that you're maintaining?
So the reason why we moved that is so that we could recoup cost on the back end when we sell them. So this is one of those assets that we actually recover most of our cost on if we sell it at an appropriate time. So if you keep them too long, you sell them for pennies on the dollar. The previous presentation that we did, we show them that cycle, we're basically selling them for what we purchased for, and the only thing that we're
I remember that presentation, and it sounds good at first, but when I look and I see 415 vehicles, 415, and I know it includes this, that, and the other. That's an awful lot of vehicles for our county to, after 5 years, get rid of, or 150,000 miles.
So we don't get rid of 415 vehicles a year.
No, you get rid of approximately 26 to 30.
Right.
Okay, that's still an awful lot of vehicles to be replacing. And that's an awful lot of vehicles for our county to have. That's too many vehicles. I mean, when I started looking through the things to see who has the vehicles, I'm like, they're needed for services, but big vehicles are not needed for certain people. And we need to start considering, we don't all need trucks. We don't all need whatevers, okay? We need a vehicle, get to and from. It's usually one person in a vehicle, maybe two. So why do we have huge, expensive vehicles? And you keep saying, well, because we buy, and they're cheaper if we buy them. Fine. The smaller ones are cheaper too if you buy them. And I'd like to see some of this changed, the process that we're doing. I know my vehicle's 8 years old, and
That's private use, though. It's not commercial use. It's not for commercial use. So you have a private
Believe me,
vehicle.
I put a lot of miles on my vehicle.
Yes, ma'am. I understand that, but commercial vehicles
And
they have
I
weight
use it
and
for
all-
carrying things.
Yes, ma'am.
For me, it's like having a truck, but it's not. Okay, and I know the other commissioners, the same thing. We use our vehicles for everything. If you have a regular citizen, they usually don't get rid of the car in 5 years because most of them have a 7-year loan or an 8-year loan.
Madam
So
Chair,
I'm looking at this and I'm saying,
should be a,
why are we
should be having with him.
doing it?
Commissioner Barrick,
Yeah.
you telling him he cannot make these decisions, but maybe
No, I
you
know,
could have
but-
that conversation either with this board during a meeting or with Mr. Howard.
Well, eventually, we're going to have this conversation because I feel that it needs to be talked. It needs to be talked about. We can't talk to each other, and I want you to know how I feel about this subject. A normal person doesn't get rid of their car in 5 years. And yes, our normal citizens use pickup trucks and all these other vehicles for work.
Yes, ma'am.
everything.
I have opened the invitation for you to come to Fleet so that we could sit down and explore all the options and explain to you the reason why we do things. I believe we met when you originally came in, and you said you were going to come to Fleet to get a better understanding. And about a week after your request, I opened the invitation again. So again, you're welcome to come to Fleet. We can sit down and I can explain all the nuances of why we do the replacements that we do. I don't want to take anybody's time up here.
No, well, I wanted you to understand, I do not like what's going on. You take good care of our vehicles.
Yes, ma'am. So,
Okay.
and it's not just a care; it's a total cost of ownership.
Thank you. You are doing a great job. I think, Commissioner, your concern is which vehicles are being purchased, not so much the care of the fleet, which they're doing a good job of making sure that the county's assets are protected.
Ready?
Anyone else before Ms. Wilson gets started?
So yes, ma'am.
Except for me. So where we're sitting now is you said the $20 million, and you said at this point we would have to take from our other.
Now we look at our other funding sources, which we're going to do in a moment.
Okay.
We're walking through the whole budget today.
Okay.
All right. So we're going to throw a few little slides in here, give you a little break from all the numbers. Well, there's a few in here. I just wanted to go over positions and what is in the general fund. So we have 31% of our general fund positions are funded or from the BOCC. And then 69% of those are constitutional offices. And, people get down rabbit holes and in the weeds like, oh, this said 240 and this says 238 and this says that. And it's a snapshot in time. We do our best to get you those numbers. It doesn't divert very much from the other numbers you may have gotten from something else or some other source. We have posted positions. We have positions we fund but aren't posted, or we have positions that are half person. It's a half a person, but it's a half a FTE, but it's a whole person. So that's a whole position. We have casual labor. We have things that are funded out of grants that are not in our adopted budget. So the thing is, the percentages is what we really want to look at, because we don't really want to get down in the weeds on over a few positions here or there that might be different based on the beginning budget, the adopted, but the next budget or the like. So we just wanted you to see that out of the general fund, over 69, almost 70% of those positions are from our constitutional offices. So just a little thing for you. What do our positions support? We support animal services, veterans, support services, parks and rec, code, housing, grounds maintenance, growth management, human resources, management and budget, community centers, county attorney, facilities, system management and GIS, aviation and aquatics, communication services, detention facility, extension services, the county administration, and the commissioners. Out of that, we have 238 positions is what we're looking at that are funded out of the general fund. Now, do we have more employees at BOCC? Yes, we do. And the next slide shows those are funded through 35.7% out of enterprise, 6.3 are library, 12.7 are fire rescue, 6.6 are special revenues, and then 11.3 are that transportation ad valorem. That's where our public works, our technical services, that's where those people are. So do we have any questions on positions at this time? All right, and here's the lovely commissioners breaking ground on our animal services building. We're going to talk about capital improvement. I am not going to read these slides and go through everything with you. We did that. I want you to be aware we kind of broke out what was general and then what ones had grants funded so they could tie to them, so that you can look at these, and if you want to go down, we can just talk about the totals. If you have any more questions on any of these projects, I'll be happy to pause after each section, and we can get the experts to come talk to any questions. and this is we want you to look at, because at the end I'm going to be asking you, what are we funding? Where are we going? We have to move forward. We have to bring a preliminary budget to you at July 22nd. So these questions are very important that we're going to ask you at the end of the session today. So general government, we have 2 pages here. We'll just flip back and forth. We have a total of about $9 million in general fund. With the $4 million of grants for these projects, it's about $13 million total. We have about, like I said, $9 million in general fund. We did cut a lot of things out of here. Parks and Rec is separate, so we're not going to talk about that yet. So do we have any questions on any of these projects that you need answered? I know we went over them in the CIP workshop, but here's your chance again. The department directors are here. Do we have any questions as you're thinking and contemplating what projects we need to move forward with? We're just talking general government right now. We'll go to the other ones, but I want to give you time for each one. Any questions on these 2 pages? Okay. All right. The next section, we have debt. We really can't cut line item these. These are our bonds. We have the EOC. We have our energy saving projects. We have our West Government Building, the detention facility, and then the animal facilities bond. We put estimate here, but we're pretty, we got the numbers. We're right on the money with that. That's this year's funding. It will go up to about 1.1 next fiscal year in 27-28, which still is less than the 1.5 that we originally had put in the 5-year plan. So, like I said, we really can't do anything about those. The next one we have is aviation. A large part of this is funded through grants. So we have $1 million in general fund for aviation, 4.5 in grants. That's a significant amount of grants, and I know that Todd does a good job working on those grants with our department. So any questions on aviation?
Yes, just a second. What is that? Trying to do math in my head. I don't even need to bother because it's so far off of what my understanding was. So some of these things are not funded by the FAA then? Because normally FAA is 90%, state is 8%, local is 2%.
Mr. Carl's coming up.
I'm not questioning the veracity of this, just I'm trying to understand the landscape, so always increasing my knowledge of this stuff.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chair, Commissioners. Carlton Hall, Public Works. So you're right, when FAA is involved, we get a lot more grant funding. A lot of these projects you have on this list are just FDOT funded.
Okay.
So that's more of a 80-20 split.
What in general does FAA fund? Only things like runway except ours?
Yeah, bigger projects, and then we usually get 80% from FAA, and then it's a very small portion for the counties because FDOT also funds.
I thought it used to be 98 and then 2.
It just depends on the grant. A lot of times FDOT
Shifting
gets
landscape.
involved, and it changes.
Okay, thank you.
All right. We have Parks and Rec here. And so Parks and Rec, quite a few things we were able to pay for with impact fees. And so they did a good job. We, cutting their budget, we reduced them by quite a bit. They are at about $2 million and about 1.2 in impact fees. So any questions on any of our Parks and Rec projects?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Davis.
Remind me on the beach renourishment, we didn't get anything for that from anyone?
Correct.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Kennard.
I'm not seeing any funds for the Chaswick campground.
Because it's solely funded by Chazawaska camp fees, so we only put things that had general fund or impact fees on here.
No, I mean the repairs that we agreed to make out there.
Yeah, we're using all the fees from the Chazawiska campground. We have, it's a little over $500,000 in there right now, I think. So we're using those. We budgeted those to be used to work on the campground.
Okay, great.
Were you referring to the state allocation? You wanted to see the state money on here?
No, the state money, we got, what, 800,000 for that?
Yes, yeah.
I think the total repairs were like 1.2 or
Yeah,
1.3.
so we're not pulling anything from general fund, and that's what we're focusing on today, so we didn't put those in there. Like, we took out some of the other ones in other departments too that are funded like 100% by grants, or like your inshore reef is not in there because it's funded through Restore, so we didn't put those things in here, just general fund.
Great, thank you.
So as we recap our parks, one more. As we recap our CIP, last year, our adopted budget, now this is the adopted, our CIP line item, if you look at our final budget, was about 18 million, but we had a lot of carryover projects because a lot of those take multiple years to do. But our adopted budget, we had $13.4 million in CIP. And then this year, the departments have requested 14.8. So it's a slight increase of 1.5. Remember that about 500,000, a little over 500, is that animal services debt. So that is a little bit of that increase. So any other questions on capital projects? Okay. So as we keep laddering out our budget and we keep taking all these funds out, so now our ad valorem, we're at a negative of 34.6 in our current year. The current millage rate for 26-27, we would be at 27.9, and then the reduced millage rate for 26-27, we're at about 35.5. So we're going to talk about some other miscellaneous expenditures in reserve funds that we have, and that will round out our expenses for our general fund budget. So we have things like Whispering Pines Park. We're in a contract with them. We give them $310,745 a year. That's been going on for as long as I've been here, and even years before that. So that's something that we have. We help support that park. Then we have MSBU exemptions. So those are for the veterans and the elderly and the things like that, we have to make the MSBUs whole, even if they're offered those exemptions. So we're estimating, now that we have the certified value, we should be able to get those numbers tighter, but we're looking at about a 2.6 increase for that. We're looking at the insurance transfer. This is everything from health, the trust fund, the liability. We're looking that we're going to have to transfer $2 million next year. This year we had in the budget for 780. So we're looking at an increase there. Then we have the general fund CIP, which is the special projects fund, that formerly known as Duke. We have that at $2,185,000. So grant match transfer, those are for various different things. This in the adopted budget, we had some money in there for the new firehouse at the airport. And then next year we just estimated that we would need about 1.5. This is separate from the $500,000 that you're putting in for a grant match, like a reserve that you have. That's the next line, is that 500. We have 1.5 in that fund right now. Next year we would have $2 million in it, and that's the 500,000. And then we have the contingency, and we always start out with a contingency, because as we begin the preliminary budget, things happen, things come up. Last year, the supervisor election had a special election, so we put that contingency in there for things like that. So this still kept pretty level, these miscellaneous things that people don't realize sometimes, or they don't think about. We're only seeing a little under $100,000 increase in that. So those are some other expenditures, and we're going to talk about those in detail a little bit more. So as we keep taking money out of our ad valorem, currently this year we're at $44.3 million. The current millage rate for 26-27 would be 37.8 million, and then the reduced millage rate, we're at about 45.3 million. So with the reduced millage rate and then the current millage rate, we're not looking at too much of a difference. But now we're going to look at our revenues. So now we're bringing those additional revenues in. Yes, ma'am.
Back to your last slide, you had said on the Reserve for Commissioners grant match, that was the 500,000, but it seems like you're rolling it up.
Well, we're reserving $500,000 a year. That was per their direction a few years ago, that you reserved $500,000, like we have the general fund CIP. Those are commissioner driven.
So at that point, I understand you taking off the 500,000, like adding it to this kind of hole that
Right.
you're saying that we're in, but then we just added 2 million to that hole also.
Well, because that rolls back into, and we're going to talk about that, that rolls back into the fund balance.
Okay.
So it's reserved now in this year, but when we haven't spent it, we hold that and we have to roll it, and then we add the 500. So we still have to budget the
Anything
whole,
that you're rolling forward, you're still
right,
taking.
and we have to budget that whole amount for next year,
Okay.
the 2 million. We can't just budget 500 because that 1.5 has to come through.
And are we using the
Bless you.
grant match transfer, the 1.5 differently for certain things differently than we would that extra 500,000 a year?
I'm going to defer to our budget.
Okay.
Generators and things like that, those ones that we already have set aside. From what I understand, I wasn't here when you did the commissioner's grant, those are for things that come up during the year that we need to have that money set aside so we can match those. We did just get some of those generators. When FEMA reopened, they reallocated and re-looked at their funds, so we have to put some money towards those.
Thank you.
Right. All right, so we went through that. Okay, so the additional revenues that come into the general fund, and the general fund is called the general fund because these are our revenues that are not restricted. They are used for general government. And I know there's been lots of talk about MSTUs. You have counties that have MSTUs for everything. Those are restricted for those specific purposes, but everybody has to have a general fund. So these are the things we put in the general fund. When you say, what does our taxes pay for? This is why we wanted to kind of walk through this. You say, what does taxes pay for? What does sales tax pay for? Well, they all go in a pot, and then we spend, we have all these expenses out of the general fund. So these are the additional revenues, and as of this time, we are not able to budget any increases in these revenues because we are, again, I'm reminding you, we're about a month earlier than we normally would be for that end of the month preliminary hearing, and then between that and September, we still get more numbers from the state. So sales tax, we get about 11.7%, state revenue sharing, 5.9%. Other intergovernmental, those are all kinds of little taxes out there that we get. Communication service tax runs about 1.5%. Charges for service are for all kinds of different services we provide. The U.S. Marshals fee, we are estimating a reduction. This is the profit we make from the U.S. Marshals. We didn't put the expense in there. We just put in the profit. I think we're being generous thinking we're going to make this much because of how many have left already, but we wanted to put something in there. We have code enforcement fines. And then we have that transfer from other funds that is about $5 million. It was $7 million this past year because we transferred money from the leftover ARPA interest earned into the general fund to put towards roads. So it looks like a big reduction, but we really kept this pretty flat because that $2 million was an in and out, and we wanted it to match up with the budget. So these are all these additional revenues that we bring in into the general fund.
Tammy,
Yes, ma'am.
I noticed you didn't add anything about interest.
And we have that is included in this transfers from other funds, which should have said miscellaneous. I think it got cut off. So that is this, if you look at our budget book, it all adds up to this number. So we add that interest in there too.
And what did you put in for the interest amount? Because historically, I know that's the cushion, right? Because I think you
Some of
put in like, if everything goes bad and it's, I don't know what you put in, like 200,000, but truly we'll get millions of dollars at the end of the year.
We might budget 200,000, but when we do the revenue projections, like last year, we did it almost at 1.7, 1.8, but we received 2.2. So really part of that true-up was the 800,000 that we didn't project. So even though the budget might be slightly less, we're capturing it when we do our projected revenues.
Okay.
We do want to be conservative because we all remember what happened during COVID. We lost everything. We had no interest. Nobody was earning money. And then, you know, interest is always a touchy one. It really is. I mean, I ran into that in my previous occupation too, because you could come into work one day and y'all go home and we don't earn any interest anymore. And there's $2 million you budgeted that's just gone. So we try to be very conservative in that. So it is added in there, and the word miscellaneous should have been on there. I apologize for that. All right, so now we're going to add money back in. Okay, so that previous slide, what we were looking at, our balance, after we took the ad valorem and minus all our expenses, now we're going to add in those additional revenues. Then we also, per Chapter 129 of state statute for county budgets, we are allowed to budget 95% of reasonable collections, because all these things, they tell us we're going to collect, this is how much millage is, but we only are allowed to budget 95% of those funds. So we put in here, and we call it a reserve revenue, but it's really a estimate for uncollected funds. This is also a little bit in here is where we see the true up happen because we bring in more. Our county is actually very good at collecting taxes. I just know that from my history in government, that you only budget for 95%, but generally they're bringing in between 96 and 98% of the levied taxes. But we have to budget this way. So this doesn't count, we don't count transfers as uncollected revenue because they're coming from other funds. We know we're going to get those things. And if the state's going to hold back money, sometimes they do that once in a while. They're like, oh, we're not going to give you all your sales tax or all your revenue sharing. So we need to budget for those things. So at this point, for the current year, we're at about $22 million, still in deficit. And then the current millage, if that for 26-27 would be $18 million, and the reduced millage of $25 million. So then we go into our carryovers. We have our carryovers and our fund balance. So what I did, because cash carry forward is a question every year. Every year, it's like, it's 37 million, it's 40 million, it's this. Well, a piece of that cash carry forward are those carry forward projects from the year before that maybe we didn't spend the whole budget, but we need to finish the project. We don't want, half a park or half a swing set or half a road, or, well, roads aren't in general fund, but we don't want those things in there. We don't want half of, the weeds pulled out of wherever they come from aquatics. So we have to carry those forward. So in this current year, we carried forward $13 million. So when you approve that preliminary budget, this $13 million is not in there. It's truly new revenue and new expenses. And that's what I wanted to show, is like the revenues you're bringing in and the expenses you're spending each year, you're picking away at your true cash carry forward, which ends up in your reserve level. So at this year, in 25-26, that reserve, which was $17 million, then we had to pull money from the COPS grant, and in the true up, we had that, and then it had to go forward. So it gets a little tricky. It's the way we have to budget. I don't like saying that term that way, but basically you budget everything in this year, and then you have to add those things that we haven't finished doing into next year. So the current millage for 26-27 and the reduced millage, we're looking at the same amounts. We're estimating in those projections of $16.5 million in carry forward projects that we have. That leaves our true cash carry forward to 22 million. All right, so at the end of next year, at the current millage rate, we would have about $21 million in reserves, and then we would have about $14 million in reserves at the reduced millage rate. What does that mean for our fund balance? I just want to put that in perspective. So, your administrative regulation says 8 to 17% of the general fund operating budget. For the current millage rate, that 21 million is 11.8% or 43 days. At the reduced millage rate, it's 8.2, which is just barely above your minimum rate, and that's 30 days. And your fund balance is 30 to 60 days. And I just want to explain the purpose of the reserve. October 1st, Sheriff Vincent asked for money. The clerk asked for money. The supervisor of election asked for money. The tax collector asked for money. The property appraiser asked for money. The debt is due. I'm just trying to go through everything. We don't have any money coming in October. Taxes don't start rolling in until end of November, beginning of December. That's October 1 to the beginning of December. That's 60 days. So if you don't have cash in the bank to pay those bills, you're kind of stuck. So that's the importance. It keeps our bond rating higher. I just want to put in perspective, if we go down to 8.2, we're looking at 30 days. At the current millage rate, we're still only at 43 days. So we're really not increasing too much, but we give ourselves a few more days. And then, goodness forbid we have a year like Milton and Helene in that year where you have to put out a lot of cash in a time when you have no cash coming in to take care of your citizens in your county. So your reserve fund is very important to keep the county functioning and moving along. So I just wanted to point that out. We're going to go to the next slide. So we kind of are, any questions, anything?
Commissioner Davis.
Sorry.
What was our millage rate in the last fiscal year? Or not millage rate, reserve percentage? I thought we were up to like 17% before,
Well,
or 15 to 17, somewhere in there.
we're about 15.
Okay.
When we did the adopted budget, we were about 15.
On 25-26 or 26-27?
25-26. We're
what I
working
thought.
on 26-27 right now.
Right, exactly. I'm just wanting to make
Yeah,
sure.
this is for 26-27 for what we're looking at. We're trying to work on. We need some direction from the board.
So just a memory, maybe the budget before the last one, we were at over 16% in our reserves, and it was 16 point something, maybe 16 point something million dollars. So now we're saying 21 million's only 11%.
Well, our operating budget has increased. We have the
That's my
constitutional
point exactly.
increased.
So government speak, we get that. When you're talking about taxpayers, they have two words, government bloat. So if the budget decreased that amount of money, the percentage would go up, obviously.
Yes.
So that's something that the board needs to really be thinking about.
Right. So as the county departments came together and worked forward, so these are the budget reductions that we have already done through the budgeting phases. The county, the BOCC departments, and their general fund, we have cut $8.8 million out of the capital improvement fund, which is 36. We reduced it by 36%. The department requests that the departments have brought to us, and then we reduced our $1.3 million. New positions, now these are, as you see, general fund and other funds, with us not adding any new positions this year. That's $3.2 million that was requested in positions. 1.5 of that was general fund. That's an 8.6 reduction in the original request. We did have a property insurance reduction of about $300,000, about $0.3 million. So the total general fund reductions that the county departments, the people that work here at the county, have already done are 11.6 million. So those are the reductions we have worked on. And so now we come to our board. And we have questions that we need so that we can move forward, so the D&B team can move forward to bring you a balanced budget, for us to balance the general fund. We've been working hard. We have many of our enterprise funds already balanced. But our general fund, we don't have balanced yet. So the millage rate, we have to have a number to balance our preliminary budget for on July 22nd. And with that, we used the reduced millage rate that came to the board in June when we did the true-up. That brings our reserve down to 8.2. We need to know if we have consensus is that's what the board is comfortable with. We need that. This is just budgeted numbers. The preliminary budget hearing on July 22nd, you set a millage rate. That millage rate is the maximum you can go to. Doesn't mean you can't go lower at the final budget, but at the preliminary, Mr. Dalton has to get those papers out to the taxpayers so they can know what their estimated budget is. So that's what you vote on, and we have to present to you a preliminary budget based on what we're determining you're going to vote on. So we need to know what millage rate that we are budgeting on and what reserve level you are comfortable with us going with.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Bass.
Well, I think the board has already given that direction. The board voted to roll back and give true-up dollars back. So we have that millage rate.
Okay.
And I think what we don't have, we know that there's $11.6 million in reductions here, but I have no idea what those reductions are. I don't know if that is what we're not funding, what roads aren't getting resurfaced, what projects are going to wait, what maintenance is going to be postponed, equipment replacement, building maintenance, service levels. I don't know any of that. And I think, what you're asking for here on millage rate, reserve level, constitutional officers, it's been pretty clear by the legislature that we are to fund public safety. And so we made that vote, and I stand by that vote. So what I would like to see is I'd like to see administration bring us back their best recommendation on how to accomplish with the millage rate that we already agreed to, and funding the sheriff, and how and what this looks like. That is something I think we've already given a lot of direction here, and you've already had your constitutional officers bring their budgets. Now we need administration to tell us how to get there.
Okay.
Any other questions before we? So Commissioner Bass said a lot of what I wanted to ask. The 10% reduction exercise, I figured that would be explained here, because when I looked at this book, I'm like, this isn't an exercise, this is.
Well, these are the reductions that the county departments have already gone through to try and reduce the budget as much as we can. We've cut office supplies, we've cut travel budgets, we've cut adding new positions, we've taken a minimum COLA of 2.8, we've reduced.
But adding new
things.
positions isn't cutting. If you're saying, hey, we're going to say we're going to add all these positions, and then for 10%, let's just not add the new positions, that's not a 10% reduction exercise.
So these
That's
are-
an adding and then taking away. That's.
So we need board direction. If that's what the board wants, is us to cut positions, they need to give us that direction at this time, because the county departments have come and we have worked hard and we've moved to what we can to the enterprise fund, and we're looking at an 8.2% reserve,
So at
which
the
going into tax reform another year is.
At the preliminary budget hearing, are we actually going to see a 10% reduction exercise?
Well, we've already reduced the millage by a certain amount,
So
so we
that
would
would
have to see, we're cutting as much as we can to do. So at this point, we have made our suggestions, and we're coming to the board to ask them where they would like us to reduce. And that's why you have your budgets out here. You have your CIPs. You have your department budgets. If we need direction from the board to tell us what we are not going to fund in this budget here. And then some of the things that we wanted to bring, that we have reserves, we have the general fund CIP, which is the 2.185, which was considered the Duke money. We did go back, we researched all our records. This was done by a previous county administrator in a formula he had come up with. We cannot find the documentation of how he came up with that amount. We've been sticking with, we pulled the records, the property records of the gas plant to see the value changes. We could not correlate it to anything specific. So we've kind of have leveled it out at 2.185 is what we've been funding. We could reduce that. We could reduce the $500,000 commissioner grant match money. Those are some things that those are commission-driven things that we have to ask if you want us to reduce those. And then CIP projects, that's also another place. We've reduced 36% of our CIP from the original needs. Where do you want us to cut? That's what we need to know in this workshop today.
So before we move on, just so I understand clearly what you are saying, in the board's last direction to reduce the millage, when you say you've reduced, that's just coming out of reserves right now?
No, we also we went back to our department budgets and cut over $1 million in our department budget.
Their new requests, not what.
Well, that's just
budgeted.
COLA. We, as you can see, that the board, I mean, you gave a 2.8% COLA. Health insurance rates are going up. So that's a natural inflation. They've been able to come back and still reduce other pieces of their budget to try to stay as level as possible. And if you go back to your department budgets, besides facilities and parks, most of them have stayed very, very level, even with the COLA and the health insurance increase that are natural inflators.
I have a question. So the millions of dollars that are in these grant matches, we have two separate accounts. If they were in part of the reserves, could this board by vote at some point in time vote to take some of that money if there was something very special or a grant that came up? Are we allowed to do that?
Madam Chair?
I'm not legal, so I don't.
We don't have anybody here from legal, I don't think.
Well, I mean, I will tell you the grant matches that was my idea. So if you had an investment account at Edward Jones and your advisor said, I can get you pretty much 50% on the dollar return for everything, that, because we now have our vulnerability assessment study completed, there's a lot of money sitting out there. But the reason that we're not getting ahead is because we've never had the money set aside for the grant match. That was the intent and the purpose of having a grant match, because those are a return on investment. That's like $3 million sitting there.
I think you misunderstand. You don't need to defend that. I understand that. My point is, it's still money just being reserved, if you will. So if you, and somehow added that, our reserve percentage would go up.
I see what
It's
you're
just
saying.
a percentage. Not saying we couldn't do that. Or do you leave it separate as subcategories of reserves so we understand what's in there, but it just takes that percentage going up? Because God forbid something would happen in this county and we tapped into all of these reserves, that grant money may be used even in that catastrophic situation because there's a grant. We're like, well, guess what? We have this money and we're just going to keep getting more money for it. So my idea is not to remove the idea.
I understand.
My idea is just to subcategory it, and then for bond ratings or whatever, the percentage goes up, because I know in this budget there's pockets of money, and I'm not saying that's wrong, because we don't want to budget so tight that any department falls out from where they're supposed to be in their budget. But there is money in the budget, and we do true up every year. And our budget is off from what we guess. And this past year it was $39 million. So I get this. I don't completely see the doom and gloom that's maybe presented here. I just think in budgeting, we can have these things that we want and just maybe categorize it a little bit differently, and it doesn't appear so bad. And I think money still in the bank for bond rating is money still in the bank.
So are we not reserving the commissioner grant match? That's what we need to know.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Kennard.
I understand what you're saying there, and on paper, it might make sense. But if we are committed to spending this money to go and get those grant dollars, that's not really reserves. We can put it over there and say, our reserves now are 10%, but they're not really, because we're gonna spend that money to go and get those grant dollars. I'll stick my neck out there at this point and say, on July 22nd, I'm going to vote to hold our millage rate the same as what it is this year. I know that's a change of course, but it's irresponsible to allow our reserves to drop down to 8%. I won't support that. If we hold the millage rate the same at 6.9898, our reserves are at 11.7%, and I would suggest that we fund the constitutional officers at their requested levels.
I concur.
Madam Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
The board has already established 3 priorities. One was the return of the true-up dollars to protect public safety and protect infrastructure. What I'm concerned about is, again, I'm going to go back and say there's 11.6 million in here. We don't know, and that is we set policy. We're not operational. We don't sit here. We're not part of the everyday operational piece of this. That is where I believe you all need to bring us back a budget, and it doesn't take away anything from us. We're still able to set the policy, but administration needs to present a budget. That's not something we should be doing. You're asking us to do all of these things, but we've already given the millage rate. That's where we started from. We made a vote on that. I don't think we can sit here today and reverse that millage rate. We're in a workshop. And to be honest, this year, I guess, I sat as the vice chair of Tax Administration and Finance at the Florida Association of Counties. We've been talking about this day coming for well over a year now. And I've been forwarding all the information that's been coming out of Florida Association of Counties. We've been given tons of information, even a way to doge ourselves internally. We should have been preparing, and I've been asking for this since the first time I was on the board, that we needed to look at budget reform. And we're here. We've been looking at this day for a very long time. And this is the opportunity. I've never, in all the time that I've been involved in government, I've never had a board that we sat on that we're asked to build the budget. The administration builds the budget and they bring it back to us, and then we make recommendations out of that.
Okay.
This is not, you haven't built a budget here.
We've done our best to build a budget. The budget is due to you in the July meeting. At this point, we're at a standstill, and this is the budget that you will receive in July, because this is the direction that we've been given. So,
Well, wait, that's not the direction. The board voted on a millage rate at the board meeting. So the direction I feel like you need today from this board is, do you want that all coming out of the reserves, or do you start looking at the budget and bring us something different? So what this board needs to give you today, to your point, which is correct, is if we say, no, we don't like the 8%, then we say where we want it, and then you build the budget around that. Or are we fully funding constitutionals? Possibly. It's hard to see without seeing the budget, but that's what we need to see. If we fully funded our constitutional request and we didn't want it at 8, we'll tell you the percent, then you build the budget. That's not our job. Beyond that, to say, oh, go to this department and cut. Just like this board can't go into all of our different departments and test for efficiencies. We don't know how to run fleet. We don't know how to run public works. That we have department heads and an administrator, and that flows down. This board just says, we have X amount of money. This is what we want in reserves. This is where we want our constitutionals to be. This is what we have. Show us what it looks like.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Davis.
Mr. Howard, you, I believe, have always said you would prefer to have 60 days reserves specifically for back-to-back hurricanes.
I would always like to have more reserves because I'm the one that's got to make payroll and make these decisions when you have FEMA and things like that. I'm hearing some of this dialogue here today, and I think oftentimes the challenging part of administration, if everything's a priority, everything's a priority. And I think that's kind of at the administration level, we need some of that help and input because for some it's roads, some it's maybe constitutional officers, and I feel like we haven't got that dialogue. I think we've tried to, but so part of that is kind of learning that. And part of this exercise today was showing how much general fund actually, how little we actually have to operate with. So it's difficult and challenging, I think, on some of those fronts. So we can always go back, look at these things, and try to trim and things like that. But again, sometimes we're handcuffed as a result of what we're able to do at that level. But we will do our very best to do that. But I think with reserves, it's important. If you have FEMA, we're still waiting on FEMA reimbursements. That was millions of dollars as well, several hurricanes ago. So yeah, I'd love to have more if I could have it. Those are analysis we conduct and look at that. And I think we've tried to do our best today.
Commissioner Kennard, then Commissioner Kennard, then Commissioner Bays, then Commissioner Davis.
I had the floor. I asked him a question, but I wasn't done.
Excuse me.
Thank you. Point being is that it sounds like we may have a different vote on the millage now unless Commissioner Barrick has changed her mind. So to my mind, that budget needs to come back as the millage that we have right now. So
Commissioner Davis, we're in a workshop where we cannot change millage or a board vote. The board has voted
I
on something.
understand that, and you don't need to explain that to me. I understand Robert's rules. Point being is that we have staff that has to produce an incredibly complex document. And so we need to do the vote in July, and we can either do it on the fly, that we just say, okay, redo the budget at the millage that we have now, or we try to be kind to staff and give them a heads up through a consensus that that's likely what the vote is going to be in July. So I'm very concerned about these reserve rates. So, and the fact that if that goes through in November, we are going to be unable to do anything but roll back without either supermajority or unanimous votes, depending on the levels. Now I yield the floor.
Commissioner Kennard.
Tammy, you're asking for direction, and on July 22nd, this board is to vote on the, set the preliminary millage rate or proposed millage rate. I don't know that you'll have the 3 votes. I can tell you that I'm going to vote to hold the millage rate exactly where it was this past year. It sounds like you've got 2, you may have 3, so if that gives you direction on building a budget to present to us on July 22nd, then so be it.
Commissioner Bays.
I just want to say it one more time for the record. That was the intent of asking for a 5-year financial forecast. I've said we should be budgeting out 2 years. Part of the money that we spent was space needs. It's looking for those efficiencies, and I'm going to say it out loud. I think there's lots of ways to gain efficiencies, and I think that we just haven't really dug into it. And there's a lot of moving pieces out there, but we have a lot of overhead that I think that we could start some consolidation. It's not going to happen this year, but over time, if we were working on it, we would be getting there. But we keep kicking the can, and I'm going to stay true to this. I think it's still administration's job to build the budget, whether you build one with holding the millage rate and one with the rollback or the true-up number, but I think that is where we need a starting point. It is not this board's position to sit here and try to figure out what's going on operationally from day to day. that is where we need your expertise. That's part of what administration should be doing.
So I'm not sure why the board votes on things when they just come back and change their minds. We had a complete opportunity at the last board meeting to use that fund balance on something that would benefit the taxpayers, and you didn't want to do that. So, we found the compromise, and it was give it back to the taxpayer. So that's what we're trying to do. And then I guess things happen and talk happens and behind the scenes and workshop comes. But this is going to look really bad if the board flips. And then next year we'll come true up that money and see how much money that we didn't expend from the taxpayers again as we just try to increase our budget. If we can't do simply this amount now, what's going to happen when this is voted in, or if this is voted in November? We should have been preparing this whole time, and we're not. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm sticking with the vote. The board voted for something. There were options given, and this is what the board decided. If it's not 8%, that's fine. We could try to move that to, I think 12% is a comfortable number that historically that the Board of County Commissioners saved in the past. And we can see what the budget looks like from there. That would be my opinion. Commissioner Barrick.
Okay, I've been sitting here listening to everything. I went to FAC, and along with two other commissioners, we learned a whole lot of stuff, okay? My biggest thing was, I was coming to a workshop, I got my book, and I said, all right, I went through the book. It didn't break down what I thought it should have done, but that is probably just the way I am. I wanted to see what the budget was proposed and where they're cutting. Okay, you're telling me, well, we cut this, we cut that, we cut the other. Okay, you all work under the administrator, okay? So we told the administrator, point blank, cut, okay? When we cut these things, I don't see what you've cut. I just see, okay, this is what we want, this is what we want. I wanted a line by line. And when I got this little book last week to look through, I went through it. It took me about an hour and a half. I was anticipating a nice big book to go through and see. And I guess that's what this workshop is not about. Workshops are about, let's come out, you tell me what you didn't do, and then we agree or disagree, and we just listen. And we don't get to say anything that we really feel, okay? I'm not one with fancy words. And I do that for a simple fact. I was a teacher. You don't use fancy words. You use words people understand, okay? The Parks and Rec CIP is way too high. I met with Eric, and I had a good time with him, and I understand, but it needs to be cut. It really, really does. So somehow, if it's not part of your budget, then we as a group have to come up with a different thing for the CIP for parks. Okay, when I look at different things, I like to see numbers. And I like to see where you cut. And if you have to go back in and cut people, then you go back in and find out. I asked for everybody's job description. And I have 2 books. And I've been working through those 2 books. Who works for what department, who works. And I'm seeing a lot of doubles and triples where people are doing the same thing. Okay? But you try and hide the money because one says it's one department of money's coming from, and one says it's another department of money's coming from. And I look at that and I say, So the thing is, there are positions and there are things that you need to go through and see what you can do. I know I called into code compliance the other day, and I was on hold for 19 minutes. But we've got a much faster system, and code compliance has more than enough people to take care of code compliance. Well, maybe the people, the citizens, other than myself that call in, also get frustrated and don't want to sit on the phone for 19 minutes listening to music till an actual person comes on board and they hang up. So maybe it looks like we're doing really good. And maybe we're doing the same with building department. Okay, so we need to have you go through, figure out what positions we really don't need and can cut. to get down to where we need to be, because at those meetings, most of the people agreed. The people are going to be saying, we want our taxes cut. And we have got to adjust as a board to say, we're only going to be able to have this much money ever. And in order to continue to give the services to our people, we have got to be very, very frugal. And that means the administrator needs to go through and do and get and cut and cut. And some things we don't need in this county. We're a small county. We're not a big Pinellas, we're not a big Tampa, we are a small county. And that's the other thing. You know, some of these salaries have gotten too high. So you need to figure out as the administrator what you want to do and then bring it back to us for this July meeting. And it needs, I want to see a realistic budget that we can live with, give our services to our residents, but we can say to the residents, we made the best decisions possible, and this is what we came up with. So I'm giving it back to you as a job, not our budget, but you, as our administrator. You need to be going through and saying, and then go maybe to your departments and say, well, this isn't needed, or this person, you know, if you have to put them on part-time, put them on part-time. Okay? Do whatever you need to do to figure out where to cut. Those are your people, not mine. You're my person, the attorney's my person, and that's the only two I have responsible for. But the budget was supposed to come from your departments, and we have to live with it.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Davis.
our population is growing, so that's why services do need to expand. And secondly, we also have to go with market rate. What is a position, what are other people paying? A big part of the sheriff's increase in budget is driven by Florida Highway Patrol continually going up, counties around us continually going up. So it is a lot like fleet management is total cost of ownership. What is the total cost of ownership of an employee? We train someone, we get them in here, and then they leave. So we've got turnover cost is enormous for any entity that does not maintain its employees, because you have a whole bunch of freshmen, things are not nearly as efficient, plus you have onboarding costs for them, and then they leave. It's the same thing, it's the sort of the reverse of the fleet management. So efficiency is everything. Reducing the budget without an eye to long-term and near-term as well, efficiencies is possibly not the best way to go. So are you reversing your vote to not, to support the current millage?
I want to have a good budget.
Well,
And
are you
that's-
supporting the current millage or not, like you did last time? You and I were on the same page last time.
Right now, the current millage, I'm up in the air, because I think
Commissioner
we
Barrick,
should
there's
start
no
system.
vote. She can't,
No.
you
well,
don't
I
need
think
to
we
answer
should-
that
I
question.
think we should start system. She says training people. We need to do like what the Lakuchi Electric does. You hire people in as interns, and they train, and they sign contracts. They get paid reasonable money, and then they have to work with the Lakuchi for so many years. We need to do that. We need to get our people from high school in here as interns, and then we would get good employees that are getting reasonable price, and they work their way up. And, you know, it's not out of the realm of possibilities. You know, our students don't stay in our county, and that's one of the things we always complain about. We have the highest rate of unemployment. I go to those meetings, and we are either number one or number two for the highest employment. We need to do something, but we need to do it in a positive way. Interns are cheaper, okay? And you get them from working for Ken, you get them working for Carlton, get them for all of the departments. And we get people trained. I mean, Eric keeps telling me that, well, we can't find this or that or the other, they gotta have this certification, that cert. Fine. You bring them in as interns, and they work under them, and we get them trained, and then they get the higher dollars. But we've got some people here that, you know, I read the descriptions. A lot of them are just a high school or a GED.
Commissioner Bays.
How much is owed from FEMA and what could we pause in CIP?
For Milton, we have probably 1.5 for the debris. We don't know how much for the fishing pier. They're at 30 to 45 days for their EHP to review it. So I don't know how much they're gonna pay towards that. So that's an unknown cost that we don't even have the estimate yet for that.
And then what could be paused in the CIP projects?
I guess that's where we were hoping.
For some direction,
Yeah.
some direction.
But how would we know what could be paused? Like how, you know?
You could ask the departments, you could ask the people who are in those departments to come up and tell you. I mean, what, respectfully,
I mean, all due respect, we're here to set policy. We are so far into the weeds. We don't want to be, that is not our job to administer and to be working with department heads. That's what we need from you all.
and respectfully, Commissioner Barrick, we will present to you that budget on July 22nd. It takes the DMB staff, we have been working on budget since January. It takes a good month to put that book together. We're already down to a little over 2 weeks. We have to have that a week before the hearing. That's why we're here asking for direction. So I just need to get some consensus on some items. When we did the CIP workshop, the board went forward I've watched several years of CIP workshops. You've cut stuff right in the workshops that when they had the CIP. Nothing was cut this year. So I need consensus. Are we funding all the CIP that is presented in this document? This is the best document we could get you on this short notice. Okay? I would have loved to get you that, but when you get that document in July, it will show all the reductions that we made line by line by line by line. That's why it's, you know, I can't carry it anymore. My back won't take it, will it?
Okay.
So I need consensus on the items that we're asking here. Are we finalizing, and it's not finalizing, we're finalizing a product to present to you at the July 22nd meeting. Are we using, I need to know, are we using the current millage rate or are we
Tammy.
trying to balance?
Tammy, there was a board vote. Your current millage rate for next year was set at the last meeting. There's been no vote to undo that.
So that's the consensus.
Amy,
Yes, sir.
we will set the millage rate on July 22nd.
We have to present to you a budget
Yes.
balance. What am I building my budget on?
I will say for the third time this morning, I'm going to vote on July 22nd that we hold the millage rate the same, 6.9898. I don't know where my four colleagues are at.
Well, your one colleague remembers what you said at the last meeting, and at the last meeting, you told her to reduce the millage by the $8.8 million.
Tell her.
She
so
should
that's
know. We
who I
voted
need.
on it.
I didn't vote, I'm sorry.
No,
I
we
didn't vote.
voted on it. We voted on it.
So,
You've got one to hold the same and
Yes.
one to reduce it.
yes. I need,
You know, hold the same.
yes, ma'am.
We have to hold the same because we can't go higher at the 22nd. We can only go lower. So we can reduce things on the 22nd, and by then you should have a better reducing. In other words, I told you what I want to reduce.
Yes, ma'am. Commissioner Bays, consensus.
I stand firm on what we voted on.
Okay. Reserve levels.
So let me get this straight. We have a workshop, so the board votes on something, and I guess I'm going to tell you this because I've seen this more than once. The board votes on something, somebody decides they don't like what the board votes, so they work earnestly to have another board vote or a workshop to just completely undo what the board decides. This does not look good for this board.
So I need consensus, funding 100% of the constitutionals. Is that consensus from all parties?
Yes.
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 All Right. The general fund CIP for special project, the current balance is $3,467,762. Are we continuing to fund that at $2,185,000?
Yes.
Again, I mean, this is where I think building the budget helps. I mean, because I don't know what we're not funding. You're not telling me what we're not funding.
Commissioner Bays, I am with you 100% on this. I expected, like Barrick, to have a book. How in the world are we supposed? It's almost like we're having a abridged preliminary budget hearing where we're supposed to be making decisions without a budget. So the board gave direction to give a millage. We have a workshop. We're all over the place. It's almost like you're going to build a budget now because of one commissioner saying something different than last meeting. So we don't even get to see the budget for what the board vote was.
This is, I mean, we put
I don't know
together
if
as
I'm going to
best of-
vote on this for our CIP. I don't know if I'm going to vote on all of these expenses in here. I assume I will vote for funding the constitutionals 100%, but until I see the bigger picture, and what I wanted to see is what we voted on, then I would make those decisions at the preliminary budget hearing. But I'm not doing that today.
Okay. We're just asking direction so we can give you a budget on July 22nd.
My direction would be to fund the CIP at the level requested for the purpose of developing a preliminary budget. Then we will have the two hearings following that when we can look at the line items and reduce from there as we so choose. But the direction today, from me anyway, would be to fund it as it's outlined.
And the other items, we never got, nobody gave us direction when we did the preliminary budget workshop back in March. We asked for direction on these. This is part of building the budget every year. I went back, I watched the meetings. You said, yes, fund it at 2.185, fund the 500,000. So we had a budget built, but the vote changed last month. So now we're trying to make sure we're keeping everything else the same because we had a budget built based on the March meeting. Not completely, we were still fine tuning and still trying to balance. Now we have to balance even more. So we put together something, we were trying to work this up so that, we're not in a 12-hour meeting on July 22nd, trying to go line by line and go back.
It seems like we have to do a 10% budget exercise. So if I don't know that a majority of the board is doing a consensus to go against what the board voted, but if that sounds like what you're trying to get from everyone, and that might be what you're getting. So if you're trying to build a budget, if that's presented at a preliminary budget hearing for the millage without obeying the board vote, then I would still like to see a budget with the millage that the board actually voted on for building the budget.
Okay. So am I getting consensus that you would like two different budgets presented?
No.
Well, I would like to just see
No,
one, but
you're-
actually for the board vote. But in being kind,
You're not going to get a unanimous vote on this. So you need consensus.
I
You
need
have
consensus.
consensus.
Okay.
Commissioner Barrick, I was confused about your consensus. Are you sticking with what the board voted for at last board meeting,
I'm
or?
not gonna change my board vote because it's not appropriate to do that. But as I listen to what's being presented and I see what some little stuff that I have, I mean, when I look at a toilet, a bathroom facility, 300,000, and I say, is it made of gold? I mean, I wrote little notes on all of this.
So that's not
Okay,
my
so
question.
I mean, I expected to see more than, what I got.
So
And I
I-
expected to be able to see the cuts.
I'm
You
not
wanted
asking you to
10%.
change any vote. I'm asking, are you wanting to follow the board's direction, regardless of whatever your vote was, from the last meeting, or have her do something other than the board
I
directed
want to
last
follow
meeting?
the board's direction, number one, because that's the highest we can put, okay? And I've seen this go through. But When it comes to July 22nd, I plan on going through and cutting, because that's what we need to do. But I want to see what you got, and I'm giving you a chance to cut the stuff, and I'm telling you that. The other ladies, the other commissioners, I'm sorry, are telling you that. You know, we need to cut. The state says 10%, so I would say that's a good idea, at least 10%. But what, you know, I don't have any idea of anything here, okay? And it frustrates me because, yes, I agree, we have to go with what we agreed on.
So it looks like, I guess we're not doing two, we're doing one, and it's what the board voted on last budget hearing.
No.
That's what she just said, so that would be
You said
consensus.
hold the millage the same for the budget hearing, and then we would cut on the fly.
She just said she wouldn't go against the board's vote last.
I won't
Well,
go against.
she contradicted herself. So would you like, in the same conversation, would you like to keep the millage the same for our budget hearing?
Budget, I need it,
Because it can only go down from there.
because it can only go down.
Just as a reminder, so the board did not vote on that last
No.
meeting.
But
The
she
board
and I did.
voted.
We both, neither of us are changing our mind.
We
Well,
went to-
here we are again with people flipping. Okay.
I want to review the important dates coming up. The budget workshop is July 22nd, which is when you will get your very large book with all the cuts that the board, the administration that we have made. That is in that book. That book was absolutely impossible to bring to today because it does take almost a month, and we're down to 2 weeks now that we have to put that together. So I apologize that I couldn't produce that entire book for you today, but it will be at the July 22nd one. You will vote at that time on the maximum millage that you can vote on. It'll be included on the trim notices. Your tentative hearing is September 10th. This is where you will, the proposed millage rate and the tentative budget. We are just building a budget on July 22nd. The actual tentative budget to move forward in operations is on September 10th. The tentative millage cannot exceed the proposed millage rate set in July unless a revised trim notice is mailed. And then your final hearing will be September 21st. And that way, at that time, you will vote on the final millage, the final budget, and the final millage cannot exceed the tentatively adopted millage rate. So those are your very important dates that are coming up.
So
That's all
just a word to the wise for you, but I guess you were leaving, or Mr. Howard. So it seems like it looks like we're going to get our preliminary budget, the big book, with a millage rate that we didn't vote on. But I've heard from one commissioner, when she sits at the preliminary budget hearing, she is going to want to cut that rate down and see what that looks like. So my advice would be to at least have both, or it's going to be a lot of work, because I foresee the majority wanting to not go with that millage, even though that's what's presented. Before I open it to the public, do any of our constitutional officers want to first have a chance to speak at the podium? Sheriff, of course.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. So since I didn't put together a formal presentation, I just wanted to kind of hit some of the highlights. I know that we went through our pay and class study, which is really the lift in our budget request this year. But since that time, we've actually built our budget and presented it to you. But I just wanted to go through a couple of things just so that you hear it and the public hears it. So looking at what did our budget accomplish this year, obviously our focus was our pay and class study that we did, but this budget supports almost 400 people at the sheriff's office as far as their pay and class. The plan does incorporate the additional 20 positions from the COPS grant, which is just shy of $650,000 increase from last year. So some of the increases that we are continuing to see, And I think Ms. Wilson said it, our special risk FRS this year went from 35.19 to 37.74% for all of our sworn employees. So what does that look like in dollar figures? That's $656,000 increase this year to our sworn FRS. So that's included in this budget. Our fuel prices, as you saw, that we're matching the county this year. It's a $100,000 increase to our fuel budget. And then our increase in software systems and network security this year is $400,000. So if you look at all of those things, some are predictable, some are not predictable. This included in this budget is about $1.8 million of those things that I just talked about. So knowing that our priority was to compensate our employees, we had to tighten our belts. And I've heard a lot of talk about that this morning of people looking at how we do that. So this year we've reduced 3 full-time equivalent positions. So we went from 412 employees to 409 full-time employees. Those were on our support side of the house. I really believe that we've got to look at using our staff the most efficient. Sometimes jobs change over years. You know, a job today wasn't the same 10 years ago. So is that job still appropriate? So we're constantly going through that. But this year we were able to eliminate 3 positions. The increases with our IT systems, criminal justice information, unfortunately, is very costly to secure, and our networks are much different than other governmental networks. So even though that those are somewhat predictable, we're kind of at the whim of software companies when it comes to those increases. So our capital budget was reduced 43% this year. When we looked at, say, how do we get back to where we're either flat or reduction, we looked at our capital, and that was really based a lot on our vehicle replacement plan. I know Commissioner Barrick, you were talking about that. We really looked at the value of our car. Even though our cars have gone up 31%, just the base car, 31% in 5 years to buy a Ford Explorer. We looked at, are we getting more out of our cars these days, and can we push that 1 more year, 2 more years for our patrol cars? And we really looked at that. That helped us get to that 43%. The other thing this year is we're finally at the year, I think it took us 7 years to get to where animal control now has the box that we can continue and move forward onto a new chassis. So that's going to save us about $100,000 this year when we look at replacing an animal control truck. So when you look at our capital reductions of 43%, that's really where the bulk of that comes from. Our debt service was reduced 6.2%. This year we had some unexpected returns come to us that we didn't expect this year that we'll be returning to the county. That's to the tune of $427,000 and some change, but that does not include any of the things that we're going to calculate that we might return to the board this year. Last year we did return $570,000 to the board, so I think that you'll see more than that $427,000 coming back to the board. And I just put myself a note in here. I know you have some non-recurring asks from other constitutionals, so maybe some of this money that we give back this year will help cover those couple of costs, which I believe is about $539,000. I think that you'll see that come back from us this year to help cover that. So I think, you know, to kind of summarize some of this, I think over the last 18 months, we have worked together to really build a sheriff's office for the future. We've added 35 deputy sheriffs in the last year with your help between the COPS grant and that first allocation that we turned 10 into 15. But my goal when I became sheriff is to create an agency that people wanted to come work for, that I've seen in the past. You know, if you look at our history 10, 15, 20 years ago, people wanted to come to work for the Citrus County Sheriff's Office, and we're working every day to get that. The only way we accomplish that is by investing in people. And I know Commissioner Davis has talked about this and several of you as well, but the cost of replacing employees all of the time, and we become the training ground because you can drive to Sumter County and make $10,000 more a year with a free car and free gas. That's not sustainable for us, so we got to make sure that we're investing in people. Our sponsorship program that we started in this past year has been a game changer for our agency. We had an applicant problem. We no longer have an applicant problem. And I think that's a testament of our investment into those young people that are coming to want to work in this profession. It's not an easy job, but we are healthier today in staff than we have been in a very long time. Our communications section, when we talk about culture in an agency, for years, There's only 50 positions in our communications section. For years, we have been double-digit vacancies. As of today, there are three vacancies in our communications section. That's almost unheard of in our recent history. I believe it's a direct reflection of the culture that we're trying to build at the sheriff's office. Out of those 35 deputies, in addition, we have 10 more going to the academy starting next week, July 13th. Our sworn vacancies, once they start, will be less than 5. So again, single-digit vacancies in our agency because we are creating an agency that people want to come work for, and we're changing that culture every day. But to continue on the path that we're going, I appreciate your support in our request this year, but it's that investment into our people to give them a fair wage and benefit package that's comparable to other law enforcement and government agencies. Our pay in class study, it suggests annual increases, just like we set whether that's 2.8%, whatever that looks like. But I hope that in the last 18 months, what I have been able to show you with our agency and me as a person is that I want to be a good partner with you in navigating what the future looks like. I know you all are in a tough position with the unknowns that are coming down in November, whether that property tax is going to go through or not. But I hope that me showing you that I feel like I'm a very fiscal conservative when it comes to that. But at the end of the day, I want to do what's right for the board. I want to do what's right for our taxpayers out there. And when we look at the future of hey, what is this going to cost next year if we continue on the salary plans? Those are all things that we've got to look at the time. And I've always said, we know what that cost might look like next year, but it's dependent upon funding. So if there comes a time where we've all got to tighten up and figure out how we're going to do that, I just hope that you know that I will be there with you to look at our budgets as well as how do we navigate the future with deficits. So I appreciate all of your support in this, and hopefully in July 22nd. That's when I was planning on doing a more formal presentation, but I just thought it was good for you to hear some of the points of the things that this budget was not just 100% salary. We did have some costs in there that we were able to navigate and reduce to get where we needed to be, where we estimated to be when we talked in April, I believe. So does anybody have any questions for me?
Thank you for the presentation. Board? I have a question.
Sure.
Can you remind me about the new recruits that were scholarshiped through the academy? How long do they have to stay?
2 years.
Okay, so we have built that in, which is great. You know what another great training grounds would be, Sheriff? The jail.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll get to that later, maybe. So, I don't know, maybe.
Thank you, Sheriff. And thanks for
Any other questions?
getting in with the budget with us.
Commissioner Bays.
Sheriff, you and I have talked about this, but I do believe that it'd be very helpful for this board to see your 3-year budget. Just because you have the COPS grant, you have your salary increases, but that third year, you give a pretty substantial bump. And I think that needs to be looked at in our overall budgeting.
So I'm just looking through my notes because so we started working on that, Commissioner, after we had talked a few weeks ago about projecting, forecasting. Let me just see if I've got that paper with me, if I didn't leave it on my desk. I don't have that exact paper with me.
That's fine. I
I
just
can tell-
think
I
it's
can tell
something
you
that they
off-
need, because I do think we need to look 3 years
Sure.
out.
So if you don't hold me exactly to the number, I'm pretty good with numbers and remembering numbers in my head. Next year, if our sworn side of the house salaries went through, that annual step increase is about $700,000, somewhere in that ballpark. On the non-sworn, on everybody else, it's in the 70,000 range. That's if you give everybody the steps that they would have. So if you look at that annually, that's what we have figured is probably going to be, because the way the steps work, and every third year there's a different step. That's should be pretty consistent.
You know what your budget would look like at the end of year 3 then, if those people stay on with you and you give them that bump?
The finance team's only been able to give me 1 year so far of what that next year would look like, as far as if everyone's stuck on our salary plan and received their increase. That's the one thing I want to make sure, our step plan is a step plan, but it's always based on funding. if the dollars aren't there to support the step plan, then we've got to reevaluate what that looks like every year.
I think that's where we've gotten ourselves into this because every year that we add something on, that's just the starting point this year, so then it becomes more and more expensive. And I think that forecasting for me is what I'm looking for so that we can be prepared. We do know what we're looking at in the future. I love the fact that you said, you're building morale and building a team, and I think that's the one thing I'm very proud of here with the Board of County Commissioners. The morale has been the best I think that it's been in many, many years. And I think this board has an obligation to protect our employees at the BOCC too. So I don't, everybody has great employees, and I don't want to sacrifice any employee at any division level. But that's primarily what our budget is built around. But I think we owe it to the taxpayers to have a plan for the future. I think everybody wants to know where we're taking this county, and that's what concerns me, is that I'm not seeing a budget being built around where are we taking our county. I think we're getting it from you. You're building your staff. You're doing the public safety. But on the full ledger side, I think we have to kind of really boil that down. So this is not picking on you. For me, it's having a more holistic global look at how do we find those efficiencies? How do we save the taxpayer dollars? But show them what they're getting for the return on the investment of their tax dollar.
Yeah, I think, our budget, and most of you, everybody's almost the same. It's about 80% is personnel. It's the people that go, the things that in our business that throw us, which you guys experience too, healthcare. If I could figure out healthcare, I'd be a zillionaire. I'd beat Elon Musk. I would be richer than Elon Musk if I could fix healthcare. But those are the curveballs. This year, we didn't expect a $650,000 increase to FRS. How do you predict that? What the legislature is going to do as far as that? That's a huge burden. When we talk about unfunded state mandates, well, they just raise your FRS. We've got to recover from those things. But it's all about, I'm proud of this budget this year because that's included in it. I estimated our salary back, if you remember, at $5.6 million just for the salary increase. We presented a budget this year of $5.9 million that accomplished all that plus that $1.8 million that's not salary in there. So I think that we tightened up the things that we needed to tighten up. And the last thing on pay and class study, I know that fire rescue's been through pay and class. The county has been through pay and class. I think some of our constitutionals have been through pay and class. I feel are the last ones to go through a pay and class to get our employees up to where they need to be.
Well, thank you for what you do out there for keeping our community safe.
Thanks, Commissioner.
Commissioner Barrick?
I wanted to thank you for going over the fact that you and I talked about the cars and the fact that, you have cars for everybody almost. And you realize that they don't wear out after a couple of years and they can at least get more time out of them. And you also have your own group that maintains the maintenance, which is what we have as a county. And I also like the fact that when we did the COPS grant, the one thing about it is the schooling, and then they sign for a specific amount of years they have to give to the county. That's why I keep suggesting we get interns from the high school for our departments and have them get paid and get stuff. To me, that's the best training, is if we train them the way we want to and they sign and they get so many years, and then at 5 years or 4 years or whatever, if they want to leave, fine. But we've gotten our use out of the person, and yes, maybe they stay 25 years. Maybe they don't. But I think the sheriff's got it down where it's going to work out really nice. We're going to get good officers, and I appreciate everything you're trying to do for our county. Thank you.
I appreciate that. I will tell you, this sponsorship for academy recruits has changed the game. Other sheriffs are looking, well, how did you sponsor that many? Some of it was with the COPS grant, but these 10 that we're getting ready to send, it's very simple. I'm not sitting on the vacant salary rate. If you've got salary allocated to people, invest in the people, send them to school, get them what they need, and in return, I hope that they spend 20, 25 years with us. So,
I like that program very much. Yeah. Anyone else for the sheriff? Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for the
Good work, Sheriff.
presentation.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Is there another constitutional that hasn't had an opportunity that would like additional time? Guys, good? Okay. I'll open it to the public. Anyone from the public care to speak? I will close it to the public. Commissioners, do you have anything final before we're finished, or Mr. Howard?
Just have one little video to show.
Oh, I am so
That's okay,
sorry.
you're good.
I went off my paper. Is that on here? Before you start that, Commissioners, do you have any final?
I just have a couple comments. I would like to see a summary of efficiencies consistent with the House Bill 1329 as you bring that budget back. And then from 2015 to 22, the board that was there, they rolled back. And that amount of rollback is almost $63 million. So that's, somehow we figured it out, but that's part of the problem. I know that we have a lot of deferred maintenance. We have some things that and that's what I'm hoping that you will bring back. When you bring us back a balanced budget, show us where we can gain efficiencies, show us where we can be better, show us where we're heading as a community, that the taxpayer has a vision for what we're doing, and that we can also move forward with our county and fund the things that are necessary.
Thank you. Mr. Howard, sorry that I almost
So I will tell you, I was in also at the FAC meeting, and as I talked with a lot of the county, a lot of folks that I know across the state, and they said a lot of people are looking for a financial miracle. That's probably not going to happen, but we're gonna do our very best. And a lot of these are F-bombs, like you mentioned, Commissioner, and all these things are important to us as well at staff level. So we're going to do our very best. But at the end of the day, it's about money. It's about control, what you're able to do and not do. That's what some of these PowerPoint slides were today, showing how much control we really have, even with positions I have under general fund. But we'll do our very best. So I just want to just say a couple words real quickly today. Throughout today's workshop, we've discussed the challenges and possibilities ahead and the importance of making thoughtful decisions moving forward. In an environment where every investment matters, it's more important than ever that we measure what matters, because better information leads to better decisions, better performance, and greater value for our community. Citrus County has built a strong foundation through our award-winning strategic planning strategy, performance tracking, and transparent reporting. The video trailer you're about to see highlights our evolution from strategic planning to strategic performance management and introduces our exciting next phase. If Kat could just roll this real quickly. And everyone has heard me say, what gets measured gets done. As we move forward, our focus should be on measuring what matters. Outputs tell us what we did. They measure the projects we completed, the milestones we achieved, and the work we delivered. But outputs alone don't tell us whether we were successful or not. Outcomes answer the questions that matter most. Did we achieve the goals we set out to accomplish? Did we improve services, increase efficiency, strengthen effectiveness? And most importantly, did we deliver greater value to the taxpayers? That's the purpose of continuous process improvement, using data to improve decision-making, maximize the return on every public dollar invested, and continue building a visible, accountable local government. There's a great quote by Brian Tracy: practice the philosophy of continuous improvement. Get a little bit better every day. I'm confident Citrus County's best days lie ahead. We're committed to that. We're going to work real hard, taking some of this input and feedback in. And again, we're going to continue to do that. There's struggles across the state, challenges. I mean, Sarasota County government, good friends there, they're facing deficits. This isn't just unique to this government. There's challenges ahead, but there's also opportunities to to continue to roll up our sleeves and do good work. So I'm looking forward to the 22nd, and we're going to continue to get your input and feedback as we do refinement up until finalization of the budget. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.